At Carafem, you can choose the abortion care that works best for you. With in-person visits in Atlanta, Chicago, and the D.C. area, or medically supported abortion pills by mail in 20 states. Some people feel more comfortable meeting with a provider in person and leaving either no longer pregnant or with pills in hand. Others prefer getting abortion pills by mail. Just fill out a short online form and, if eligible, your medication arrives in a few days in a plain package. When you choose abortion pills, Cara, our text-based abortion companion, is with you every step of the way, offering 24/7 support and answers whenever you need them. However you get care, Carafem will support you every step of the way. Learn more at carafem.org.
Get your mother-loving ears on because your big-time radio DJ's got news. PayPal lets you choose how you want to pay for all the stuff. With PayPal, I can pay in-store, pay online, or pay over time. What's that? You want this translated into song? I hope you're sitting down. You can pay your own way. You keep those ears on, you hear? Don't just pay, baby. PayPal.
Learn more at paypal.com.
Oh, Hilton stay. Your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
Welcome to the Aspects of History Summer Reads podcast. And with me are the usual gang that we've had before, so regular listeners will be familiar. But for those who are new, I will go through who we have here with us. We have Antonia Senior, who is the historical fiction reviewer for The Times. She is the host of the Spy Masters podcast. And also the History Book Buffs podcast as well, which has got lots of great little shorts on YouTube, so check those out. Richard Foreman is an author, a publisher, and amongst many other things. So we have Richard here, and then also Roger Morehouse, distinguished historian, author of most recently The Forgers, and for those on the film club, regularly on the film club, will know Roger from that. And your new book, Roger, I think is out in September?
October. Wolfpack.
About
Inside Hitler's U-boat war.
Yes, great stuff. Okay, so we're all going to do 3 books each, but as is usual with this, it's pretty sort of informal. And so I'll start off with Antonia because she's facing me. What's your first book for your summer reads, Antonia?
So you were very kind in your introduction, Ollie, to point out that I have a number of hats. So I've got a book from each of my hats. So from the Spy Masters hat, my Spy Masters podcast, which I do in association with Aspects of History, my favourite book that I have reviewed or read for that this year is Gordon Carrera, The Spy in the Archives. So this is the amazing story of Vasily Mitrokhin, a disgruntled KGB archivist who basically smuggled out some of the most extraordinary secrets of the KGB over a period of decades and managed to get them to the West. And I knew a little bit about the Mitrokhin story. He collaborated, when he got all these documents to the West, he collaborated with the great intelligence historian Christopher Andrew on the files. So I knew him because of that collaboration. But I didn't know really the story of his life and how he did it. And I think in hands less assured than Gordon Carrera's, it could have been quite a boring book, because basically what you're talking about is a librarian gone rogue, really.
What, voted Tory?
Yeah. Yeah. No, let's not get carried away. This is in the realm. This isn't fiction. No, this is an archivist who sort of loses his mind, really. And Carrera makes it an unputdownable book. It's such a common thing to read a non-fiction book about spies, and everybody goes, oh, it reads like a thriller. But this one, really, I couldn't put it down. It was absolutely extraordinary. I really recommend it. Perry highly.
But he goes into all because we went to the presentation, didn't we?
At Chalk, yeah.
At Chalk. And he was, which of course was sponsored by Aspects of History. Wasn't
I'm glad you remember that.
That's it. And you introduced it to me as well,
yes.
which for me was a highlight, if I'm honest.
Thank you.
But he goes into all those motives as to why he turns rogue, which I thought was lovely.
Yeah.
Because it was all very kind of, to a large extent, workaday stuff. You know, he'd been passed over for promotion, and then had a disabled son who couldn't get sort of treated in the Soviet Union and all this sort of thing. Yeah. So it was all everyday things, and then at the same time, he's the guy that the KGB just said, "Oh, stick him in the archive. He's just a geek." And that was his revenge. There was
an ideological component to it as well, which is that he was very angry when he was reading the archives, because he was in charge of this massive project of moving the archives from the Lubyanka inside Moscow to a site off-site. So he had access to the entire KGB archive, right? And the more he saw, the more horrified he was about the KGB's role in Russian life, right? And one of the tragedies of his life is that he got to the West and he gave us this amazing archive, and he wanted to concentrate on like the KGB cracking down on dissidents, about the KGB quelling internal dissent. We just wanted to know about Kim Philby. And he, that was not what he was there for. That's not what he did it for. So he was already a difficult and prickly man. And then his exposure to the West made him also difficult and prickly. All of which came out just wonderfully in the book.
And the other point that was made was that the tail end of his life, he spent warning against the sort of re-emergence of the KGB under Putin, the Putin regime being basically the KGB writ small. And the Western world going, oh, well, that's all finished. The Cold War's finished. We're not listening to that anymore. And
nobody was listening to him. Nobody was listening.
Yeah, no one was listening. So it in many ways, a kind of very tragic life, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Mitrokhin.
I loved his short little chapters, the way Gordon writes them. It really, really keeps it pacey.
It's all the rage these days.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. But the one thing that has slightly emerged is this shadowy potential MI6 spy for the Russians.
Yeah, that might have been operating in the 80s.
I think even later as well, into the 90s.
Yeah.
Which is so intriguing.
Mole hunts. Come on, Ollie. You can go.
I'm sure they're riddled full of spies.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Well,
if history is anything to go by.
Yes, I know. But what's quite interesting is that the ideological imbalance of these things, because the big spies in the West, they were all ideologically motivated, just as Mitrokhin was. But the ideological motivation shifted with time. So you were more likely to be ideologically motivated against the West and pro-communism before, the Prague and before the communist regime showed all its true colours, although I argue that you should really have seen it before then. Whereas, the opposite side of that ideology is, disillusionment with the communist system and a kind of pro-Western. Well, not so much pro-Western, actually, because, again, he makes this brilliant point that the West wants its Russian defectors to be kind of liberal capitalists, but actually they're not. They have a different worldview. They're often patriots, Russian patriots. And Mitrokhin certainly understood that the KGB as a threat, not to Russia's potential as a liberal democracy, but to Russia's potential as fulfilling Russian destiny. All these slightly weird woo stuff about Russia that you don't really get.
Which Russians love to talk about, by the way. Yeah.
So yeah, brilliant book.
Nice one. Right, Richard.
Hello, everyone. So a slightly different tack. So my first pick is The Sceptred Isle by Helen Carr. And the book is a narrative history of the 14th century. And as we know, 14th century, basically features Black Death, Peasants' Revolt and 100 Years' War. There was a poll recently, however, that basically said people would rather live in the 14th century than under Starmer's Britain.
Was it a poll of one? You.
I think Ashcroft did the poll. But the book, despite being covering a bleak period, is just very entertaining and pacey and good fun. I mean, Helen focuses her narrative on the kind of lives and reigns of the kings involved. So we have Edward II, Edward III, and Richard II. And it's a great romp through the centuries, sort of a la Dan Jones, if you like. Now, I know that sort of Roger and Antonia may take truck with me for saying this, but the book also proves that women can do military history. Where there are some nice set-piece battles. And basically, you know, it's the century was kind of riddled with war between England and France. So, highly recommended. As I say, I mean, if anyone's kind of read Helen Castor's book or Dan Jones' book on Henry V, they'll basically enjoy this very much.
And is it, 1300 to 1400? Or is it...
Pretty much.
It's not like a long century?
No, it's not a long century. It's pretty much... I mean, it starts with basically the kind of death of Edward I. And then we're sort of mid, you know, on the cusp of kind of Henry IV taking over, yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, she's basically done her homework. She doesn't say anything crazy. You know, this kind of, you know, she goes where the evidence takes it. So, you know, Edward II isn't alive and living in a villa in Tuscany by the end of the century, for instance. And it's very good.
So
you know, Richard II is still a complete shit. Which is nice.
Come down off that fence for me.
And there's a kind of bit of a tragedy about, you know, kind of Edward III's reign, where we kind of had a sort of apogee just after Cressy, and then it all went wrong.
There's a slight crossover then with Helen Castor's Eagles.
There is.
So what? How do they? Is their portrait of Richard II? That's where the crossover
it is similar. I mean, I would say that Castor's sort of book, which is kind of weighted towards Richard II a lot more, is a lot more sort of forensic and detailed. But I mean, I think that. I mean, I know that the Helens know each other, and they would have swapped notes on Richard II.
Yeah.
And also, just, I mean, as with sort of, you know, Helen Castor's book, it proved often how correct Shakespeare was in terms of his judgment of these monarchs.
And I always think that where there's the Black Death, there's bound to be some fun to be had. So, what was her portrayal of that like? I remember reading Philip Ziegler's book years ago.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, about a sort of third of Europe died.
Yeah.
So that's comforting.
So there's that.
But she does end it with the fact that lots of people died. There was a shortage of labour, therefore people's wages went up. You don't need a union for people's wages to go up. And also there was a lot of innovation. There was a sort of burgeoning middle class at the tail end of the Black Death. Where a lot more people, sort of skilled artisans, and a basically market for, let's call it, middle class goods.
Sort of proto-capitalism almost.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not all bleak. And obviously there are some sort of, you know, entertaining, interesting, even heroic characters like the Black Prince.
And the epicenter, the port of entry, was it Lyme Regis? Does she mention that? It sticks in my mind from the...
Well, I mean, I think lots of people can tell you different things.
Right.
Where, you know, it came from Venice.
Yeah.
It originally come from sort of the Mongols. And I think it may have Norfolk as well. Right. I mean, I think it's sort of spread throughout 3 families, which is the whole of Norfolk.
It's okay to want an abortion. Did you know 1 in 4 people who can get pregnant will have one? So it's actually more common than most people think. At CareFM, you can choose what type of abortion care works best for you. We have in-person locations with private entrances in Atlanta, Chicago, and the Washington, D.C. areas. And we also offer medically supported abortion pills by mail in 20 states. For some people, it's more comforting to come into a private office where they can sit with one of our medical providers and either leave no longer pregnant or with abortion pills in hand. For others, they prefer to get abortion pills through the mail so they can decide the best time and place to complete the process. Getting abortion pills by mail from CareFM is simple. Fill out an online form, and a licensed provider will review your medical history, And if eligible, your medication will be shipped to you in a couple of days. Cara, our text-based abortion companion, will guide you through the process from start to finish with instructions, reminders, and answers to all your questions whenever they come up 24/7. With either choice, please know Carafem will support you every step of the way. Learn more at carafem.org.
You mentioned Edward III, like coming, because it's funny. I asked, Ian Mortimer, who wrote.
Yes, he's very good on Edward III. Yeah.
Yeah, Edward III. He said if he picked one person from the whole Middle Ages, he would pick. Edward III.
It was a long reign. I mean, the guy kind of, helped reinvent England, where gave it a sort of the legacy of Arthur. He wanted to give the countries a sort of patriotism, really, and a kind of cult of chivalry.
And is that Helen's Richard III then?
Oh well, that's Helen's Edward III. No, she talks
Edward.
about that absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of cultural heritage. Yeah, she's very good on it. But she also it was obviously restricted to a certain class.
Yeah.
But then there was kind of the literature of the times as well. Thumbs up. It's a great read. I mean, whether you're interested in the period, you'll like it. But the book's also a great introduction to the period as well.
Excellent. Nice one. All right. Thank you, Richard. Roger.
So my first, I'm going with old favourite historian of mine, Richard Overy, and his most recent book, Reign of Ruin. He's, as you know, his background is really Third Reich, I suppose, and then he's sort of spread out a bit more to doing Second World War, and then this is looking at Reign of Ruin, looks at the bombing of Japan at the end of the war, including the atomic bombing, and the politics around it, and the whole sort of I suppose reincorporating the atomic bombing into the immediate hinterland of the subject of the bombing of Japan, which is interesting because I think a lot of people tend to take it in isolation.
Tokyo was...
Yes, but exactly the firebombing of Tokyo, which was absolutely catastrophic, which happened in March, was politically and in a human sense, materially, just as damaging as the atomic bombings later on. He sort of reintegrates the atomic bombing back into that wider narrative, which I think is really interesting. Beautifully done, as you'd expect with Overy. I mean, tightly written. The arguments are all there.
It's not a long book, is it?
It's not a long book. I always say I like a short book, it's quite pithy. If I'm honest, there are bits, particularly the gory bits, where you'd think, when you have your popular historian's hat on, you would probably egg that up a bit more. He doesn't. I mean, he's heart and soul an academic. So where there's gory stuff that has a sort of an essential contribution to make to his wider narrative, then he uses it. But it's not. There's no sort of gratuitous use of people being immolated in the streets and so on, which obviously I would do if I were writing it. But but that's me and that's him. So, but fair enough, and it's absolutely beautifully written. Very solid, and
and does he come down on the fact that correct to launch the nuclear bombs?
Well, it doesn't really go into much on that sort of morality of it, I would say. But what's interesting is looking at the thought processes on the side of the Japanese as to how they come to the decision to surrender. And he says actually the decision's already been made to surrender before the second bomb is dropped. It just hadn't been communicated yet. So the second bomb is actually superfluous, right? Nagasaki. And also that they were pretty much unaware, because of the new technology and the top secret and all of that, they were pretty much unaware that precisely what had happened as well. So that was interesting. And certainly in the light of everything that had gone before, we just mentioned the bombing of Tokyo in March, which was a conventional bombing. When they hit Hiroshima, then they go, oh my God, they've done it again. Like they've hit us really hard again. We can't. And it was the mentality was, this is going to provoke internal unrest. If we're this open to being destroyed from the air, we're facing political unrest. That was the decision, right? They weren't fully aware. I think there was a suspicion, and people were saying this was a new type of weapon, but they weren't fully aware of what had happened. We imagine, because we have 24/7 news coverage, and we have information at our fingertips, that they would have had.
But surely the
immediate
Americans
knowledge.
must have announced it.
At some point they did, but he makes
all
the
their
point,
radios are burnt out.
Yeah, well, he makes the point that joking apart, he makes the point the Japanese weren't fully aware of what had happened. They knew it was bad, but they didn't know this was that new type of weapon straight away on the morning of Hiroshima. So that the little nuances like that actually make it a really interesting discussion, I think.
I watched a debate on YouTube with Richard Overy over the Allied bombing of Europe, and I think it was Patrick Bishop on the side saying, the bombing had to happen. It was, and all the various reasons why it was it was the right thing to do, and Richard Overy was on the opposite side, saying that the Allied bombing campaign was not the right thing to do.
Well, I mean, he brought out his book, The Bombing War, that
Yeah.
I think makes the argument that, the thing about the bomb, there's a kind of arc where it was right to do, and then is it superfluous and gratuitous? I
think it's also part of the argument is it's also at some level counterproductive.
Yeah.
So you can bomb, industrial facilities, military facilities, as soon as you start with the area bombing, which is pretty much what anyone could do. However, they dressed it up in the Second World War. That's what everyone was doing. The Americans called it precision bombing, but it wasn't. Then you run the risk, and this happens both in the Japanese case and in the German case. You run the risk of basically galvanising the bombed population into support for the regime that otherwise they were probably ambivalent about. So, that's the payoff. That's the problem you have.
I mean, there's only so many times you can bomb a train station.
Yeah. But then again, see, I always have this argument. We're shifting the parameters, but I always have this argument every sort of 13th of February whenever that comes around with the anniversary of the bombing of Dresden. Somebody on Twitter will go, "Oh, wasn't it awful?" And it's so unnecessary, so late in the war. Well, they didn't know in February of 1945 that the war would be ended by May. It was still ongoing. And if you bear in mind that the Germans were still deporting Jews from Berlin in March, I think even into April 45. Right?
Was material still being made and transported through Dresden at that point?
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was more about men.
Yeah.
It's more about Dresden was the main nodal point for the communications in and out of Breslau. Breslau was being besieged, big German city in the east, now more or less forgotten, but the Polish Wrocław. That's what the bombing of Dresden was for, right? So the great horror of history, as we all know, the great sin of history is to read it backwards, is to 20/20 hindsight. They didn't know that war was about to end. They didn't know that Nazi Germany was going to collapse in a couple of months' time.
As Bomber Harris said, they sowed the seed, they reaped the whirlwind.
They did. So I think, all of that post facto kind of rather simplistic binary morality, I think doesn't help us in all of this.
I don't think you pass your history GCSE nowadays.
So yeah, Reign of Ruin, Richard Overy, top historian, really good book.
Great stuff. Well, my turn. So summer is upon us, and my pick is the history of Test cricket.
Oh my God! Ollie,
as its title actually is, Test Cricket: A History. And
I might just go make myself a cup of tea.
Are you stumped?
Yeah, I'm stumped.
Well, you might think this is not an interesting subject, but
you might know.
You would be wrong, because it goes. Well, to quote C.L.R. James, what do they know of cricket who only cricket know? So it does go beyond the boundary, to quote C.L.R. James again.
Wow.
So many puns, cricket-related puns being dropped.
Yeah, so
like catches in the slips.
I hope this is not a long innings.
But it is fascinating. Yes, cue a huge amount of extremely tedious quips from Richard.
I love cricket. I think that I've read a couple of reviews of the book. Sounds great.
Yeah, it is really. I mean, it starts. So this is very much Test cricket, not just cricket. It's Test cricket, so it's even more specific.
It's a test listening to this.
But as I'm sure many listeners may know, that Test cricket's real cricket.
It's the finest form.
And we have the first test starting tomorrow for listeners listening to this on Wednesday.
Who are we playing?
India.
Oh, okay.
So, by mentioning India, this is the empire. This is how the first teams to start playing Test cricket interestingly, the first international cricket match was between Canada and America, United States, in the
That almost sounds like a World Series.
mid-19th century, which is the oldest cricket international.
That is an interesting fact.
It is. America and Argentina were in, I think, the top 5. This is all mentioned in Tim Wigmore's book. He's the author of Test cricket history. And Argentina and the United States were, I think, in the top 5 teams in the world at the time when Test cricket nations were established. But because they weren't in the British Empire, they didn't get to play Test cricket. So they were limited from playing Test cricket, and it was really only...
So Test cricket is basically an imperial invention.
Absolutely.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Was it exactly the same
Unashamedly
rules?
so.
Was it exactly the same rules, the way we codified things?
There are various... I mean, overs were longer. The number of days that you played the match in was either longer or shorter. They had... I think there was a 3-day Test match. There were limitless Test matches. So they would just go on until there was a result. I think the longest was 9 days. Look at Antonio.
Everybody died of exhaustion.
Jesus Christ.
There's he covers the body line affair, which is really well done by Wigmore. There's this is this sort of whole idea of when you start. Antonia's quite literally reading her phone. It's passive aggressive. But yeah, no, the whole imperial element is very interesting. I mean, like the West Indies team was captained by a white man up until, I think it was Frank Worrell was the first black captain. You had the England team, they didn't pick a professional sportsman. It was the captain was an amateur, not a professional, until the 1960s. I mean, can you imagine this with any other sport? It's hilarious. It's just, and he goes through each nation. Interestingly, Afghanistan is the only country to be admitted to Test playing status that was never part of the British Empire.
And the irony being that we tried very hard to make it part.
I suppose. Yeah. 5 Afghan wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the Dutch not play Test cricket now?
Sorry?
Do the Dutch not play Test cricket?
No, they don't play Test cricket. No. So it takes you. It's a great romp through. I would say a lot of social history here, but particularly imperial history. And
Ollie, you have actually. I'm not a fan of cricket, but I think you've sold it.
Oh,
I think you've sold it,
Roger. Well, I mean, it's really enjoyable and takes us right up to the modern day, as I mentioned, with Afghanistan, and of course how women have been treated in Afghanistan. The ICC has refused to throw Afghanistan out of the Test-playing nations, despite their treatment of women. But it's a complicated issue.
The ICC probably treat women worse.
Yes, I'm sure. And we recently had
don't allow them into the long room.
See, the World Test Championship just happened, where South Africa defeated Australia at Lord's. Wonderful match. But the head of the ICC, an administrative bureaucratic figure, made a video about the match, and it was all about him. It was like the players barely involved. It remains an imperial project. It's just shifted from Lord's Cricket Ground to Dubai and run by the Indians.
Interesting. I think that sounds quite interesting.
Thanks, Roger.
My other sort of panel members.
Well, listen, I've read lots of books.
I've read lots of books on
Exactly,
cricket.
thank you.
I've written about cricket.
See open-minded.
Yeah.
That's what I always say.
I mean, you sort of skipped over a lot of the golden age stuff there, but we won't carry on.
Yeah, it covers that
Yes.
period up to 1914, yes. the
Does
golden
he
age.
do a greatest Test 11?
No, he doesn't. I mean, that's an almost impossible question that whatever you pick, Antonio will disagree with.
Yes, I have strong views.
You'd have Beckham at number 3.
Yeah, I
Yes,
definitely
she'll
have
be-
Beckham.
I remember now, I had a discussion with you about depression in cricket, and you had no time for that either. So, yes, it's not as if a lack of interest. It's
Depression
like,
in cricket.
it's
I
like
mean,
a
I think
cricket.
depression in cricket's just got worse for anyone listening to this podcast.
hostility to cricket.
No, I mean, I've been to a Test match. I've been to, what's the one with the Ashes?
You're
The
doing your thing where your voice goes up an octave when you lie.
No, I've been to the Ashes.
No, she just said, "What's
Wait.
the one with the ashes?" That's not that.
So you took a ticket for someone who with no interest, so
Yeah.
someone who was interested.
And
couldn't go.
apparently it was a really important one because we won or something. and I fell
Be
asleep.
Vega.
Yeah. What?
Be Vega.
Oh, okay. We
Roughly
won,
what year?
And it was the first time we'd won, I don't know, in the early 2000s.
2005.
Could be 2005.
Yeah, and it was the
Oh,
first time we'd won in a really long time, and I was
Yeah.
there at the finish, and I was fast asleep through the whole thing.
You must have been at the Oval then.
Yeah, I think
Amazing.
so. But I've been drinking in the sun all day, which I did quite like.
Well,
I
there
thought
you
this
go.
No,
is...
see that's an important part of
Yeah.
test match culture.
Yeah,
And I just
particularly at the Oval.
was
Yeah.
fast asleep when we won the...
Entirely
That was the most
understandable.
thrilling series.
Yeah, apparently, so I was told.
I went
Oh,
to-
I was there! Woo!
I went to the open top bus parade.
Did you?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. When
I think you missed that.
Freddie Flintoff fell
I
out
was
of
He
down
ate a
tree.
cigar.
Yes.
So-
Yeah. So no. Test cricket history. Tim Wigmore. Recommended.
Very good.
Right. We'll go on and then we'll have a brief break with Richard. So it's Antonio, then Richard, and then we'll have because I think we're then halfway.
We'll go to lunch.
Yes, we could have lunch or tea.
Yes, good. Okay, so in my reviewing of historical fiction for the Times, I read a lot of historical fiction, and it is very rare that I fall in love with a book as hard and as deeply as I fell in love with this book. It's called The Pretender by Joe Harkin. It's about the pretender to the throne, Lambert Simnel, in the early days of Henry VII's reign.
Oh.
And
story.
Brilliant.
listen, it is one of the best books of historical fiction I've probably read in 5 years, and I've read a lot. You have to trust me on this. So,
I believe you.
yeah, good. It's like I believe you on cricket. You can believe me on this one. So, a young boy, he's 12, he's growing up in this kind of peasanty village somewhere in the depths of England. And then one day, some aristocrats arrive in the village and having sort of done a double take on seeing him, they come back and they tell him he is actually not who he thinks he is. He is the rightful Earl of Warwick, who is the great new hope of the Yorkist cause in their ongoing fight against the Lancastrians. Now, the fact that our hero is 12 and the Earl of Warwick, who was supposedly killed, was 10, doesn't really matter. They're just going to pretend. And it's
historical fiction, though.
it's all fiction. So
Yeah.
that's
No,
the
but in
point.
real life it didn't matter either because the same problem applied in real life. Right?
But Simnel was like, probably a bit
Maybe
out
the
of
Home
whack.
Office judged his age.
Anyway, so then he goes off and he's taught how to be kingly and how to be an earl. And there's some brilliant stuff there about the kind of dislocation of his identity and who he is, and he stops knowing who he is. And
So is the narrator Lambert Simnel?
yeah, well, it's close third, I think. But basically, it is very, very funny, very, very filthy in places, and very clever and wise. And I cried and I laughed. Brilliant. Honestly, everybody should read this book.
So does he believe he's the Earl of Warwick?
Well, he doesn't initially, and then after years of living as him, he sort of begins to. And then he's told he's just Lambert Simnel, and they send him to work in the kitchens. And at this point, he's like not 12 anymore. He's grown up and he's quite hot, so he just basically spends his whole time shagging these aristocratic ladies who can't decide if they want him to be the Earl of Warwick or the kitchen boy. So they just kind of mix it up. Honestly, it's
That's
great.
fun.
It's
Sounds
so much
fun.
fun. It's so
It
much
does sound
fun.
fun.
I mean,
It's
there
just
are quite
it's
a
such
few
a great
stories
story
about
anyway.
these,
Yeah.
whether a certain party, whether it's the Yorkists, etc., or the enemies of the throne, they do come up with, oh no, this is Edward II, or this is Richard II, and they have these sort of proxies, yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
there
it's
was a succession of pretenders at that time
Yeah.
against Henry VII, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Well, it's very so. It is always confusing as to who's who. So the Earl of this Lambert Simnel, who's pretending to be Earl of Warwick, I think is supposedly the son of the George Duke of Clarence, who's the younger brother of Edward IV.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well done.
And so in between Edward,
Who Lambert Simnel? You said Earl of Warwick, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that one of the princes in the tower?
No, this
No.
is
Oh,
later.
was it not?
No.
Oh, okay.
So so Ollie's right. He is would be
Edward V was in the tower along with his younger brother Richard,
Right.
Duke of York.
Duke
That's
of
right.
York.
So but we can
yeah.
edit
So
that
this
out, though,
guy.
can't we?
You can edit the bits out that make me look stupid, not the bits that make you look stupid. They stay in.
Yeah, so this guy he would have been the nephew, I guess, of Richard III.
Yes. Okay.
And only he's not.
And how seriously was his challenge at its peak?
Well, I think like all of these things, because the Tudor dynasty, you know, Roger's point earlier, which is a very good one, looking at history backwards, is a very foolish endeavour. The Tudor dynasty was so fragile from the beginning because it had no legitimacy at all, really. So any vaguely credible pretender was a threat to Henry VII, just because his regime
Because it could galvanise support
and
discontent and
It's
all
like
that.
a Game of Thrones.
Yes.
It is exactly like a Game of Thrones.
So it almost didn't matter. You know, they just became a lightning rod for everything else. Right?
If you
They
can be
knew.
convincing enough, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's why they weren't even that bothered that he was obviously the wrong age,
Yeah.
right? He looked right. They made him, you know, they trained him to talk right.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
He was Chinese. It didn't matter.
So where do you stand on the Princes in the Tower? Do you think that they got away, or Richard III didn't murder them, or it was all a terrible accident and
Terrible accident.
yeah,
They both tripped up the stairs
he tripped over.
and landed on Richard's sword.
Well, there was that. There was that new bit of evidence, wasn't there? Didn't they find the recently?
Yeah, no,
They
but
found-
The Channel 4 documentary. I'll put a link in for the listeners because David Pilling did a Q&A on that documentary.
Or was it rubbish?
I
They
think-
found the knife or something
They got-
bequeathed to someone.
This is
No, there's a lot of stuff that's circumstantial and
at best.
exactly at best.
Yeah.
And you have people who are so committed emotionally to the fact that Richard III is really unfairly judged
Yeah.
I mean,
that
I think
they discard any kind of
Yeah.
historical evidence.
my answer to your original question is I find I'm not emotionally committed one way or another. I don't really care. And it seems to me that the most, if in all of these cases, by and large, it's the obvious explanation.
Yeah.
I.e.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard III.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much crazy stuff around this story. I mean, someone claimed to have found Richard III in a car park a couple of years ago as well. It's just insane. So this is a whole feast of insanity.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's lovely, isn't it? That it shows that there is still a vibrancy in...
Yeah.
Yeah, people are so carried away with the Richard III was a great guy society.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Ricardian
Ricardians
society.
are,
Yeah, they're enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I think it's quite sweet. But I think Richard III was absolutely right to do what he did. I think it's... why can't we just celebrate the fact that he was ruthless?
Wow, Ollie. Remind me not to let small children near you. Or if they get on the way in your way to the ice cream van on a
When you
hot day.
babysitting next?
Yeah.
He killed more children than the Tavistock Clinic.
Dear, oh dear. Right, okay. Thanks, Antonia. Richard, on to your choice.
So
and
the
then we'll have a
second
rate.
choice, we have what can only be described as a career-defining book. So this is Rob Lyman and Richard Dannett's new military history on the Korean War. I think a few of us have read it, and we all know Rob as well. And I mean, a bit like Septidar, I sort of raced through this book, which is sort of, the reason why it's kind of so enjoyable. There are plenty of lessons to be learned or relearned from the Korean War. I mean, we may have touched upon them, where it's very difficult to sort of carpet bomb someone into surrender, which, although the Americans had kind of air superiority, it was never going to that was going to create a kind of comprehensive victory. We also have kind of commanders in charge who are egomaniacs. Douglas MacArthur had a Napoleon complex, basically. And we were close to World War III, potentially. And what else do we have? We have the fact that even towards the end, kind of Stalin was an abhorrent shit who was a plague on the world as well. I mean, he was pretty much the cause of the Korean War, I would argue. So there's lots in there. Stalin, yeah. I mean, he was the one that allowed the North Koreans to go ahead.
They said,
and also in terms of a surrender as well. Obviously the Soviets kind of held things up and sort of played the Americans, if you like, and the war went on for a lot longer than it should have. And one of the clever things about the book, in a sense, is that it does skip over about the last 2 years of the fighting, because it was this very kind of it stagnated basically. So the book kind of deals with grand strategy, but as well as the sort of, voices of the soldiers on the ground. It's just an all-round excellent piece of military history that fills in a gap as well. I don't know, I think Max Hastings wrote about the Korea War probably about 30 years ago plus. And I must confess I've not read that, but no, I think it's already been a hit, and it is a kind of soldier's perspective as well in some ways, where both the authors are kind of military men, but they're both historians too. I think you guys have read it.
We did.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, and it does what you just said. It does that wonderful thing which you get in the best military history. Go back to the best of Beaver and so on. You get, you're all the way from the
it's
guy
a telescopic
in the
lens.
Yeah, you've gone the foxhole, and then you're back to grand strategy, and the general's discussing whatever, and you flick between the two almost effortlessly. You don't really notice the difference, and that's great skill. So it's beautifully done actually.
Yeah, it's not a war I knew very much about at all, and I felt like I was sort of, my hand was being held through some quite tricky stuff, and it felt effortless, and I thought it was really good. Really good. So impressed.
There's something like 3 million civilians killed.
Yeah, well, this was the thing that I was astonished by. I hadn't appreciated that it was like the most devastating conflict.
The bomb
and per capita, the bomb tonnage, unbelievable.
Greater than World War II.
Yeah, insane.
I mean, it's very difficult to get your head around that.
It is. Yeah.
It's the same people, Curtis LeMay, isn't it?
Yeah. Curtis LeMay,
our old friend,
the insane Curtis LeMay. Yeah, but no, absolutely right. And you can see, obviously there's technological improvements into what they can carry and the aircraft and so on. But just that relatively small, it's going to sound very Orientalist to say that, but a relatively small conflict, 3 years long, and as you say, the last 2 years are basically kind of in a state of stasis. But there's lots of bombing going on. But that could have drop more tonnage than the Second World War is that's mind-boggling.
It's also, the book also shows, there's other military history books too, just the virtue of good leadership. So this guy Ridgway comes in, basically within 6 months, sort things out and creates a proper functioning army.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
It can and does happen. I mean, there was also the South Korean guy, Paik, is it? Paik.
All right, yeah.
My South Korean's rusty.
No, it's
not what it was.
But also, because we all know Rob quite a bit, but I was basically saying to him, I said, one of the things to do with the paperback, maybe you may have to do this with your U-boat book, is a kind of postscript, which McIntyre does with The Siege, and also Saul David does nowadays, is what happens to these key players afterwards. Only takes a paragraph. And no one really looks these things up on sort of Wikipedia or whatever, but, what happens to Ridgway and what happens to Paik. But thumbs up, yeah.
How does the book work as a kind of dual author thing going?
Well, it's hard to tell.
Can't see the join.
No.
Sure, I can't see the join. There was, there was the Roberts Petraeus book as well a couple of years ago, and again, we both met those guys. And
well, yeah, because I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, well, I did this chapter, he did that chapter.
Okay, so if there was a join to be perceived, there was one then in that case, because they were actually separating.
Yeah, I think Petraeus did the Vietnam War because he did he fight in it or
no.
Because my experience.
No, I think he did he was more prevalent in the sort of Afghanistan and Iraq chapters because he was serving.
No, but I meant as a sort of younger officer. He's too young for that, I think, isn't he? Yeah. But he was a lot more familiar because he studied that in West Point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I know from my experience co-authoring, as I did on the book on Wrocław with Norman Davies, that was. Well, everyone finds their own MO on this stuff, but we literally used to bounce text, and you'd add a bit, I'd add a bit, and so it would go. And before
it was like Steve Davis and Tony Mia.
Yeah, we're going to have our tea break. Good stuff. So we'll come back and we'll resume with Roger. But until then, listeners, don't go anywhere, and you can listen to my voice encouraging you to buy the magazine subscription. Hello, Ollie here. Please forgive my interruption, but I wanted to let you know that at Aspects of History, we produce a digital magazine featuring articles, interviews, short stories and book reviews of the best historical writing available. Authors featured including Ben Macintyre, Lucy Worsley, Andrew Roberts and plenty more. An annual subscription is available for only $9.99, that's pounds or dollars. Yep, you heard that right. That's 6 issues for under £10 or dollars. Head over to aspectsofhistory.com to subscribe, where you can also gift subscriptions. Now back to the show. We're back. Roger?
We're going straight into it.
Well, yes, so we are back.
Right.
We will resume with Roger.
So my second pick is a book called The CIA Book Club by Charlie English, which is a sort of fascinating, I was going to say a fascinating little story, but that's rather... it could be perceived as pejorative. It's not meant to be, but it's about a CIA operation during the Cold War, basically smuggling reading matter of all sorts. Now we'd like to imagine, I suppose, it would be Animal Farm and 1984 and that sort of thing, and Captive Mind and all that sort of thing. But they were smuggling anything from Cosmopolitan magazine all the way up to Pride and Prejudice and Orwell in between and Me Washington in between. All into Eastern Europe, basically to sort of keep, free thinking and freedom of speech and all of that alive.
Can I just, in the English language or translated?
I think it was both, actually. A lot of it's in translation, but even original material. And it kind of morphed. It was originally, the Soviet Union and communist-controlled Eastern Europe. And then it sort of crystallised into primarily a sort of Polish operation, because I think they perceived that the Poles were particularly receptive. So although it's in essence it's a bigger story, it kind of focuses in on the Polish experience. And you've got a lot of big characters that later come to the fore with Solidarity. Adam Michnik is in there, for example, as one of those sort of beneficiaries of this and people involved with this network. So it fed into the whole sort of Solidarity underground and so on. And it's a really good sort of both politically really significant and really well told, but also a bit of a sort of a rip-roaring tale.
Yarn.
Yeah, it's a yarn of people smuggling and getting caught and what methods they deploy to sort of not get caught and all this, and what happens if you end up on the wrong side of the Polish Secret Service for smuggling stuff in and all that. And it's just really, really well done. Really interesting story. And it fills a bit of a gap as well, actually, in terms of that idea of, how, you could look at the Solidarity story and how, Poland becomes, really it's the first domino to fall, effectively, in communist Eastern Europe. And arguably it had already fallen maybe 10 years before 1989. Solidarity is kind of proof of that. And you can explain that in many ways. You can explain it by the fact, the cussedness of the Poles, if you like, is part of it. But this is another element of it, that they were being sort of drip-fed, not Western propaganda, but Western literature. And that was the world that the Poles always felt themselves to be, completely tapped into. They never saw themselves as being Eastern Europeans. They thought they were part of the mainstream of, Christian Europe and all of that. So what the beauty of this was that it kind of subtly confirmed them in that. Said, yes, you're with us. You're in our cultural sphere, which I think was tremendously powerful. So undoubtedly was one of those strands that succored Solidarity, succored the Polish people.
I mean, did the readers provide feedback, as in we want more X or Y in terms of A author or B genre? Or they didn't really get into that?
There were some little networks. So particularly through, there was the Kultura, which was the great sort of cultural Polish language cultural magazine, but based in Paris. A chap called Jerzy Giedroyc, and that was sort of part of that network. So you could almost have a sort of a feedback loop to some extent as to what was required and what wasn't.
So didn't the Pope get a couple of the books that were funded by the CIA and he wrote to the publishing house, not realising it was a CIA operation, to thank them for the book.
Yeah.
And then the CIA, the guys running it in the CIA headquarters, who were kind of siloed, there's some quite interesting stuff about the CIA's role in it. They were kind of siloed. They kind of ran off to their, whoever was paying the check, saying, look, it's the Pope. And that was part of that. Because that was one of the really fascinating things about the book, if you don't mind me saying, Roger, is that it was brilliant about Poland, but it's called the CIA Reading Club, and actually the CIA bit is not a big part of it. It's mainly about how this literature was going out into the world. But the CIA operation was fascinating because it was a really small operation within the CIA that was not considered glamorous.
Wasn't sexy at all.
Yeah.
So a lot of the CIA, the top people and the decision makers all wanted to be smuggling, rocket launches into Afghanistan. They didn't want to be smuggling Solzhenitsyn into Poland because they thought it was boring.
Couldn't spell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a real conflict there. You're absolutely right.
And Charlie English makes a really, really good point that even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, where it would have been possible for the CIA to actually give itself plaudits for that operation because it had been culturally so significant, there were kind of internal political reasons why they still had to big up the very expensive boys' own nonsense operations like Afghanistan and downplay this one, which was actually arguably infinitely more impactful on what was necessary in the Soviet Union, which is, a revolt from within.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think that's the beauty of the book, really. It's it's almost a rebalancing of our perspective on all of this.
Yeah.
Because I think we tend to focus on the rocket launches into Afghanistan as being, the epicentre of, Western operations at that point. And actually this is just as important, you say, if not more so. And certainly over longer time.
And also to the individuals, because one of the things he does really beautifully is pick up some of the voices from inside Poland specifically, because as you say, it does concentrate on Poland. And just talk about how important it was for them on a personal kind of soul deep level to know that there was an alternative story about the kind of, about how a country can conduct itself.
Yeah.
And that there was an alternative vision for Poland based on this literature, and that they felt part of that world. Yeah. And Orwell was crucial to that as well, wasn't he? There was some really good stuff about Orwell.
Again, absolutely right. But again, the point I made earlier that the material they sent, the vast majority of it was not political. It was novels and stuff. I mean, it's about belonging to a culture. That was what they were selling. They might be smuggling in a bit of Orwell on the side or Solzhenitsyn, but it was a cultural warfare as much as anything.
Yeah, and also because I suppose, in itself, that's the riposte to a Marxist state in which everything is political, is to say, actually, do you know what? Here's Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. It's not political.
Yeah, enjoy it.
It's a great novel.
Yeah.
And even the not being political is, in fact, ironically...
Is political. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this story that's related to this? About Winds of Change by Scorpions?
Oh, yeah.
No.
That apparently the lead singer...
Klaus Meine.
German band, no?
Yeah. Klaus Meine.
You literally... You didn't look that up. You knew that music. On your head.
Yeah. Well, it was...
Little sparks.
Basically a CIA asset, and the song was... pushed and promoted by the CIA
Is that
because
true?
You know the lyrics.
Yeah. I followed the Moskva down to Gorky Park.
Yeah. Well, David Hasselhoff, who was obviously a big singer in Germany, he was working for Knight Industries.
and he, of course, brought the wall down.
In Walmart's Who Newville, joy started to grow. For online-only savings sure to steal the show. Tech treats and toys so dazzling and new. Walmart Cyber Monday deal soon ready for you. It's online only with very little time to spare. December 1st will soon be here, so be sure to be there. The Who's are prepared. Are you ready too? A day packed with savings. Amazing! Who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
Was his handler was Devon.
Yeah! I think she's back.
Not Kit.
Wow. You always rely on Richard to elevate proceedings.
Has anybody written a book about the CIA's funding of, middle of the road soft rock?
There's an extended
Sorry.
podcast series presented by Patrick Radden Keefe, who wrote the Say Nothing book and also the book on the Sackville dynasty. And
So there is then.
it's a
But it's
podcast, but not a book.
Yeah.
Not a book. No.
Oh.
No.
And that's true though.
Well, no, it's rumour. It's
rumoured.
It's tantalising. So he speaks to a CIA agent who.
Well, I mean, I think Klaus Meiner's still alive. Surely could ask
he
him.
meets him in the final episode.
Could they not ask him if he was a CIA
well,
asset?
yeah, I
Could
won't
be a sting in the towel.
I won't. Yeah, very good. I won't ruin it. But he starts off. It's tantalising. He meets a CIA agent. Says, "I can't talk about this. I can't talk about this." So that only makes it more intriguing.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, Gordon Sumner of Sting, his dad was very high up in the CIA, was he not?
I don't know.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Good stuff.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's no punchline, that's true.
All right. Well, we'll move on. My next book is Lest We Forget: War and Peace in 100 Monuments by Tessa Dunlop, which is a lovely book that goes around each country in the Union: Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It looks at the way we memorialise our dead, regardless of whether it was during war or... So there's a monument in Scotland where a Hercules plane crashed into the side of a mountain. There's the Commando Memorial there.
Erasig.
Yeah. Then, I mean, there are 100, so I could go through every single one, but I won't.
So how many is it? 100 monuments?
Of them,
Wow.
yeah. And I sort of like the ones that I guess most interesting to me. There's the Falklands War Memorial for the Welsh regiments, well, the Welsh Guards who suffered terribly at Bluff Cove. And then there's Northern Ireland. There's the Warren Point Memorial, where the paratroop regiment was hit by a bomb on the same day that Mountbatten was murdered.
Oh, yeah, it's very famous.
And it's awful. So she speaks to a man whose brother was killed in the explosion, and all that was left was a hip bone fused to the seat. It's horrific. And he joined up the parachute regiment as a result of that. So, little stuff like this, which when one looks at the bigger picture, it's not hugely significant, but she's managed to find people and get some interesting oral history out of it. So, and the bit I like, which I mentioned at the beginning, is I like the fact that it takes each country in the Union. And
I mean, were there any memorials that, looking through today's generation, they might feel uneasy about?
Well, we talk about the Bomber Command one.
Yeah.
Bomber Command, very much so.
Which is quite a modern one. That was
I mean, 10 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Very controversial.
Yeah.
Mate, I think now that, particularly when you see what's going on today in other conflicts, that might make the Gen Zs very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But war's hell, isn't it?
Well, so's Gen Z.
Yes.
Wonderful. That sounds.
If
that
you
sounds
could visit, I mean, I suspect you have visited some of these, but if you could visit any, were there any of the ones that pricked your conscience?
Funnily
or
enough, I did go to one that I thought would be familiar. I thought that there should be a kind of acknowledgement to the generation that was killed in the Great War. Those, young men who were killed in their, hundreds of thousands. And so she goes to a school in northwest London where there is a memorial to the son of a woman who's...
Harrowing.
It is harrowing. There is a memorial to the son of a woman who... He was killed, he was 19. She's created this room and no one goes in it. And there's one light shining, and that's been the case since 1919, I think it is.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
Quite frank, yeah.
That's a bit.
There's a portrait of
Bates
him.
Motel-y,
There's a
isn't it?
portrait of him at the end of the
Wow.
of the room where. So there's all sorts of. You go from that.
I mean, you go around lots of villages in this country, and the
Everywhere.
war dead of
Yeah,
World War One, of the
Yeah.
families, etc.
Yeah.
It's you should pause and read.
There's one, I think Berkhamsted near me. There's a war memorial, and there are 4 brothers. It's almost like Saving Private Ryan. Four brothers.
4 brothers.
Yeah, from the First World War.
Yeah, you're right. I think any small village will have.
And France are very good at this.
I think nearly 5% of the population was killed in the First World War.
I saw a wonderful memorial. Sorry to ramble here, but that's what we're here for, right?
It is. That's exactly
I saw a wonderful war memorial in France, rural France, somewhere down Loire or further south from there, and going through this little town late at night, and it was a big sort of granite, block like that with all of the names, but it had, in a sort of bas relief, it had an old person, obviously the father of, or like reaching up and touching a name, but in stone as a bas relief. It was absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning, and it sort of brought it in that moment. It brings it home, how the generational trauma and all of that. I thought it was brilliant.
There's a brilliant novel about the World War I memorials by a French writer called Lemaitre. I think it's called The Great Swindle.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant, and it's about how the creation of these war memorials became both like a massive scam and a active memorial. It's really. I'm interested you read it, Ollie. It's not a widely read book, but you know it.
I think I read it about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's really good.
In paperback. I'm blown away by it, actually.
Yeah.
I think he's written a sequel to it, which I haven't
read yet. Yeah. I think he's a great writer. Right. Anyway, sorry to derail.
Not at all.
It's a beautiful book.
Very relevant. Good stuff. Okay, Antonia, this is your third and
final book. So for mine and Roger's podcast, the History Book Buffs, we did a double header, shall we say, on James Holland and Al Murray's book Victory 45, and also Phil Craig's book 45, The Reckoning. Now, obviously, James Holland and Al Murray's books got all the kind of attention because they're big names. But Phil Craig's book's one of the best books I've read for a very, very long time. I absolutely loved it. It looks at the end of the war, but from a completely different perspective. It moves it outside Europe, and it looks at the empire and what the end of the war meant to different bits of different empires, and how none of it was simple. It was all very complicated, and he tells a number of different stories. So, for example, he looks at India in that immediate post-war period through the examples of one guy who was an Indian nationalist but believed that the best way to fulfill that dream was to learn how to govern and take the reins in a sensible way. And his name
work with the British
towards that end. His name was Timmy
General Timmy.
Yeah, who then goes on to become the Indian Chief of Staff, and counterposed with Bose, Subhandra Bose, who basically got into bed with the Japanese and to a certain extent the Nazis, in the sense that your enemy is, your enemy's enemy is my friend. Well, Japanese imperialism, Nazi imperialism, these were not necessarily better than British imperialism. So that's one absolutely endlessly fascinating strand. Another one that I had no idea about, which was so interesting, was at the end of the war, obviously the French and Dutch grips on their old empires. So French Indochina was like, chaotic power vacuum. And British generals basically freed Japanese prisoners of war, armed them, and sent them in against the Indo-Chinese nationalists. And you're
against
like,
the natives.
Against the it's absolutely extraordinary.
It is extraordinary.
And they were fighting basically, for kind of contracted by the British to fight for the French to put down the Vietnamese. And Phil makes some wonderful points about the long tail impact of that later on, to how much the people.
And it sort of feeds into communism, because you look at like the Viet Minh starts essentially as a nationalist organisation. It quickly turns communist, and he puts it into that context, doesn't it? That part of that turn is due to those circumstances at the end of the war and how complex it was.
Yes, and I thought what was amazing about this book It's like colonialism is such a sort of difficult and divisive topic, and most books on it that you read at the moment seem to come from one agenda or another, and to be, politically active. And this book didn't seem to me to be an activist enterprise at all. It looked at each individual strand, it looked at each individual moment, each individual person, and said, this is complicated. Some people were pro-British, lots of people were not. Some people were conflicted in ways that we don't recognise. And where the British committed terrible crimes, Phil reports them. You know what I mean? He's neither one side or the other. It's just straight down the line. This was difficult, torturous territory in a moment of great geopolitical flux.
He does navigate it all very well.
Oh, he's absolutely brilliant at it.
It
Yeah.
sounds like he's doing the job of a historian.
Yeah.
I know.
Who knew?
Do you know what? This shouldn't be remarkable,
No, it shouldn't
right?
be.
I know.
We
Exactly
shouldn't have
right.
to be having
Exactly
this
right.
conversation.
Yeah.
Like
he
people.
gets an endorsement from Nigel Bigger and
Adrian
an
Lester.
academic.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but I think he's an academic who's the other side.
Yeah, Lester.
Of,
yeah.
of,
And that's tribute to his even-handedness. Isn't it?
Yeah.
But you're right. It shouldn't be remarkable. There's been too much activist history, same as there's been too much activist everything in the last 20 years.
Yeah,
So-
especially on this topic.
This
This topic
topic,
is
yeah.
particularly toxic and
Yeah.
it's very boring. And actually, normally, these days, I tend to steer clear of it because I just can't be bothered to read everything through such a opaque 21st century filter. But this wasn't like that at all. So well done, Phil Craig.
Well done, Phil. Big
We
up,
were saying
Phil.
we should get him to do some other contentious
Yeah.
subjects. Yeah.
maybe the subject
Mid-80s rock.
subject to the next selection from Richard, maybe.
Oh, why?
Well, no, I
What are
may,
you
talking
doing?
of singers, etc., I may endure the wrath of Bob Vyland through my final choice, and I hope to God he doesn't write a poem about it. But my final choice is Douglas Murray's On Democracy and Death Cult, although, I mean, it's not technically a history book, but it's certainly kind of informed by history. And it's about the sort of events of October 7th, what happened kind of before that to cause it, and what happened in the sort of aftermath of, in a sense, the reaction of the world to it. And I dare say some of you may have read this book, and we've covered sort of Douglas books before sometimes. And it's a pretty horrific read at times, but it's no less an essential read for being so. And he's almost becoming a prophet more than an historian about what's happening in the world and what's going to happen. Depressingly, he's often proved right. And I mean, there's more chance of Bob Vyland breaking America or Ipswich, his hometown, than this happening. But his book should be on university syllabuses.
What, Bob Vyland's?
I don't think he can
He's
quite...
from Ipswich, is he?
I believe so,
Well,
yes.
He's right up there with Brian Cant as famous
Oh, really?
Ipswichians. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Brian Can.
Play away, way.
Are you serious? Brian Cant, the great Brian Cant.
No, sorry.
I know who Brian Can is.
Ollie, do you know who
Children's
Brian
TV
Can is?
presenter, Play away.
Well, Ollie's too young.
Ollie's the same
I'm the
age
same
as me.
age as Ollie. Oh.
He just looks younger than us.
We weren't allowed to watch television.
No, me neither.
Too much information. So back to the books, everyone. I mean, I'd like your... I mean, it's...
Well, I went to
everything's a hot potato in this weather.
Yeah, I know. I went to see Douglas Murray in conversation about that book, and he was...
Oh, who was that with?
Or give a talk. Who was he talking to?
He was being interviewed?
Was it Gove? You were there, weren't you? It was Gove.
Yep.
And Douglas Murray was, passionate and brilliant, and
He is brilliant.
Yeah.
He is brilliant.
I mean, so it was. We were talking about this over the weekend. Okay, so we spent the weekend at Chalk History Festival, at the same time as the BBC
Glastonbury,
was
yeah.
broadcasting live anti-Semitic hatred
Incitement.
and incitement on national television, and it's almost too horrific for words. And the idea that we are living through a new era of mass anti-Semitism, I think, is one of the most depressing things in a very depressing world. And look, I mean, we can all have our opinions on whether the Israelis have gone too far in Gaza or not. That is largely irrelevant to this point. And this point is that it is not our war, it is not our place. And the idea that our streets in this country are full of moronic people supporting a terrorist organisation with an anti-Semitic agenda, an explicit anti-Semitic agenda that demands the death and destruction of the Jewish people, is one of the most appalling things that's happened in my life.
It's obviously the book is recent,
but
it also is predicting.
Yeah, that I thought was interesting.
In a sense, dark and more miserable times, but it's also a wake-up call as well.
I think the point where he's going with that, and you're right when you say he's as much a prophet as a historian of our modern times. When I read it, he talks about, as you said, October 7th, a bit of that background behind it, the response, so the IDF response, and then the wider world Western response, which is, I think, probably the most astonishing part of the story, right? And I think he's just put it out there. You've got the Columbia students or whoever it is, Harvard or whoever, UCL, wherever it is, that you've got this generation of students that have basically been
inculcated,
indoctrinated in anti-Semitic nonsense, anti-Western nonsense for one thing, and that's all part of the mix, obviously. And he sort of just puts it out there. He doesn't say, there's not a sort of a bit where he says, watch it, people, because this is the future, which is what I thought was coming.
He keeps asking questions. He says, it's basically, so why is this different? Why are we reacting differently to the Jews? Yeah. And actually, I mean, in terms of sort of that generation and or kind of culture or whatever, the last thing the Gen Z want to be called is racist.
Yeah, but there are some racist,
absolutely,
some forms of racism that they consider to be acceptable.
Or even righteous.
Yeah, righteous. Yeah,
it's depressing.
And on the other side, without so what I think Douglas Murray's book is he's sort of I was going to say he's painted the devil on the wall. He's sort of sketched the devil on the wall, as in this sort of rather horrific, kind of very partisan, very very. Nasty future. The other take on it, which I heard from Konstantin Kisin over the weekend, which I thought was quite funny. I'm not to downplay it, but he said, this rather idiotic, middle class, right on, the subset of humanity that goes to Glastonbury, said, and he says, who knew that they were so against in vitro fertilisation, so they're cheering against the IVF, which I thought that was right.
Death to the IVF.
Death to the IVF. So I thought that was quite funny, just making the point, joking though he was, but, these people would fucking cheer for anything.
Yeah, we have nothing to fear.
I mean, in terms of...
Tarquin and...
I don't think they're that representative either.
No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are. So I think we shouldn't necessarily...
They shout very loudly.
Yeah, we shouldn't necessarily, take them that seriously.
Absolutely.
It's daft.
And they stole Kneecap's thunder as well.
Yeah, well, all good. That's all good, because they're rather idiotic too.
Yeah.
But it is particularly weird as well. Like, why does everybody feel like they have skin in this game? Like, it is such an intractable conflict. I don't like having an opinion on it because I don't know enough about it. I haven't read enough books. I don't know enough about it. And yet, why does everybody not only feel like that they have very valid views on this faraway conflict?
Well, there is a bit. I mean, actually, if you read, say, Sebag, Jerusalem, I mean, even the ancient modern maps, Jerusalem was at the heart of the world, the heart of the map, and all these religions meet there, and history intersects there. There is this kind of Jerusalem fever, if you like, that it still grips a certain amount of people. But it is also strange that a sort of a place. I mean, I think Jerusalem's basically the size of Bristol with an equivalent population.
Yeah.
Yet, no one, unfortunately, wants to destroy Bristol.
No.
I mean, my only caveat, and I thought this when I went to see Murray talk about it, and I haven't actually read the book, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. So 100% the Western reaction to it, blah, 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 horrific. I wonder whether he felt to me to be slightly too uncritical of hardline Israelis as well, that do exist as a category. And, you know, the settlers and what's happening in the West Bank.
In the cabinet as well.
And in the cabinet, and Netanyahu as well, who is basically, arguably, fighting this war, or both wars, the one against Iran as well, with one eye on his own legal problems. You know, so this is not...
I do think
all
that's
of this
fair.
is being lost in the mix because it's become a, tribal thing in the West, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just,
Allowing it to play out in its own... Yeah, I agree.
So, did you think...
I agree. I mean, Douglas Murray is almost a victim of his own, I don't know, eloquence, rhetoric brain, where he makes the case so forcefully, it can sound almost a bit zealous.
Yes.
And there are criticisms
that's fair.
to be made,
Yes.
which could and should be made in a slightly longer book, if you like. But this is where it's the difference between, in a sense, what might be considered reportage and history
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because, I mean, each of the points that sort of Douglas Murray hammers out, you can see absolute logic to it and sort of fair-mindedness. And there's a lot of it. But is there too much of it? Where is, in terms of, in a sense, finding the holes in his own argument, if you like, or what are the criticisms?
Yeah.
So there is a bit of uneasiness about that. I agree. I can't quite put my finger on what those are, but is there a hole in the book as a result of that? I don't know.
I think you're right, though.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, he obviously felt, and I understand this, an absolutely vitriolic fury at the reaction to October the 7th that had people in the West out on the streets on October the 8th.
October the 8th,
telling Israel that they were the aggressors.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think if you're interested in that subject, you should read it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not a long read. I mean, this is where we all like short books, Roger. Yeah. And a few more students should read it who have perhaps been captured by some cretins.
I think that's the other problem with it, though. The only people who read it are the already converted.
This is a problem. You're preaching to converted,
or
throwing a pearl before swine.
Yeah. Okay, the next one.
It's almost like we've planned this out, which, by the way, listeners, we completely haven't. But in terms of, mentioned Jerusalem as, one of those great multicultural, but also crucially Jewish centres, you could say the same thing about Budapest. Couldn't you?
Oh, look at that segue.
Look at that for a segue. Last Days of Budapest by Adam Labor is my last book, which is a really searing is the only word I can think of, examination of Budapest in the sort of last months of the war, really. It builds up to it, but the focus is on the last months of the war, specifically the takeover of power of the Arrow Cross, which was a domestic Hungarian fascist movement in October 1944, and they basically ran the show under German auspices until the place was besieged and taken by the Soviets in February 1945. And in that time, and before, in 1944, unbelievable horrors take place in Budapest, which had been, as I said, this sort of great centre of Central European and of Jewish, culture and civilization, all of that. The Jews of Budapest are basically shipped out, the back end of 1944, shipped out to Auschwitz and exterminated in their hundreds of thousands. And what Adam Labor does in this is he tells that story in unrelenting detail, it must be said. I mean, I think it is a brilliant book, and it's a brilliant piece of research in terms of how he's knitted together all the various voices and the various narratives that he's got. If I have a criticism, and if I was reviewing this, my criticism is that the best history books have different, like a camera has different sets of lenses. that you can pull out, like we were saying before about
Telescopic.
Rob Lyman. Yeah.
About Korea.
Yeah. So with Rob Lyman's book, you know, you've got the guy in the slit trench, and then you pull back, and you've got the guy in the in the staff car or whatever it is. This is kind of the focus, and it feels like it feels the intensity of it sort of kind of grows as the book goes on. There's never a let off in the intensity, you know, which gets quite exhausting, but it's bloody good.
As in too many almost voices on the ground.
There's no, to me, I don't mean to
draw back.
Really as a criticism, because it's not meant to. It's an observation. There's never a drawback to draw breath and then you go back in. It's kind of the intensity grows as you go into the story, and you kind of know what the end's going to be, and it's not pretty. But it is the end of it's the end of a centre of Jewish Central European civilization, and one of the sort of big themes that comes out of the book is a sort of sense of everything what was lost in Budapest, right? You know, culturally.
Is there a family history angle to this?
Yeah, his family background is I think Jewish Hungarian, absolutely. So obviously the research work has been phenomenal, but it is, again, it's a reminder, I suppose. I mean, this is where I come from in my background. How I sort of arrived at history was through a weird fascination with Central Europe, which grew out of '89. You know, I've already talked about the CIA book club and the Polish angle on that. So when I saw this, I thought, got to read that one. Central Europe has got so much to offer all of us, you know, whether as writers or readers or whatever. You know, just go out and get stuck into it. It's fascinating stuff. And so much of our history, in particular our popular history, is retreadings and rehashings and reimaginings of stuff that we already know. And yet you've got something like, you know, Budapest or the CIA story, which is genuinely new and genuinely fascinating. And it essentially doesn't get onto anybody's radar. And that is shifting. I think I've seen a shift in that maybe in the last sort of 20, 30 years. It is shifting, which is to be welcomed. But, you know, let's shift it.
It's maybe, I'm drawing the telescopic lens out a bit, and it's maybe a problem with publishers pushing some of the books on their list that are sort of the darker horses rather than what they paid their most for and what's on the front of their catalogue. Also, they're not the books pages anymore that can really kind of break a book through like it would have maybe Stalingrad years ago. So there are sort of other factors, but hopefully good books do get found.
Will rise to the surface.
Well, one hopes, yeah.
Well,
it kind of does happen.
I've never heard you being naive
aspects
before.
of history, this book.
I'm drunk.
So that was my third. So Last Days of Budapest, Adam Labor.
So I'll put links into the show notes, and I think many of them we featured, not all, but many. Right, so I think we're at the last one. So my one will be, we're heading to Northern Ireland, and...
Wow, as if we hadn't had enough of sectarian horror.
We've not got many fun summer reads again, have we?
This is a really nice read. It's for an Irish publisher. It is called The Sorrow and the Loss, and it's all about the female experience during the Troubles, which, you know, is not... I don't think there are that many books that have done this, really. There are women who've been involved on... It covers all sorts, really, from the women involved in the IRA. So if listeners have watched this new TV show called Say Nothing, they'll be familiar with two women in that story. But there's also others. There are women involved with the loyalist side. There's one who was married to a loyalist killer called Top Gun.
Nice.
Brilliant.
Called that for the amount of people he had killed.
Wow. Charmer. Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, he did kill in different ways, but of course, Top Gun is that nickname. But I think the comparison with Tom Cruise ends. He is this sort of steroid addicted drug fiend into coke, he's this sort of and the abuse that he metes out to his wife, who is the subject of one of these chapters, and it's written by Martin Dillon, who's written about the Troubles for many years. But it's just horrifying, and to see someone living in a relationship in an environment like that, and she then calls it all out and suffers from her own community as a result of that. That's just one story. I mean, there are mothers of soldiers who are killed. There are wives as well. I mean, it's not...
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I don't think there's a huge amount of happy stories in this.
No, the title gives it away.
But the important... Yeah, it does.
Doesn't sound that cheery, does it?
Yeah, but the important point, I think, is that you get the sort of the female story that is often overlooked, because these organisations, the IRA, the Loyalists, deeply misogynistic. So, I mean, the IRA never had any woman on the Army Council.
Yeah.
Or anything.
I mean, that is a few rungs down in their sort of, their list of crimes. Let's be honest. So,
Are you sure about that?
well, isn't it?
I think misogyny is a pretty outrageous crime, Morehouse.
Same with misandry.
No, that's righteousness.
Yeah, interesting. So is that the sort of thing you're reading in your spare time these days?
Yeah, that was a spare time read, and interviewed Martin a few months back, and yeah, there's some good new stuff in there that Martin's found, and yeah, I think it's a really good book.
Excellent.
Now, not to leave things on to a depressing note, let's have a fun summer paperback choice as well. Can be an old book.
Because I read so much historical fiction, I read 5 books a month for the Times, and I've been doing that for
It's a hard knock
Snappy,
life.
we want a snappy...
Yeah, so I'm just going to say,
Fun.
Normally I don't read historical fiction for pleasure, but this year there were 2 that were nabbed by my Sunday Times colleague, and I love these authors so much, I cannot wait. So they're not actually paperback, but
Okay,
they
fine.
are. So Matthew Plampin is a brilliant writer, and he has a new book out, so I'm going to read that with much excitement. And Laura Shepherd-Robinson, she also has a new book out. So these are 2 that I'm literally going to buy with my own money, and I'm going to read on holiday for pleasure. I know.
Own money.
But right, okay, I might not go that far. I've probably got a copy sent by the publishers, but I am going to read them for pleasure.
Nice. So I'm late to the party, but I started reading the Bernie Gunter novels.
Oh, they're good.
And these are excellent. These are cut above.
They are very good.
In terms of just work on a mystery, the research is done, diligently, but with a light touch in the end. He's funny. I'm in for a treat this summer. Yeah. I'll read.
And the research is, and I speak as someone who does know some of this stuff. The research is top notch.
I think he's almost dedicated, a bit like yourself. He's dedicated his life to the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's good. That's excellent. I'm going to, off the top of my head, we have just filmed an episode of our History Book Buffs where we were talking about First World War, non-English language First World War memoirs and novels. And I referenced there The Good Soldier Schweik by Yaroslav Hasek, which is something I read eons ago.
And it's fun?
It's hilarious. It's fun, it's daft. The protagonist is this sort of, ordinary, Bohemian Czech Joe who is called up in the Austro-Hungarian army in the First World War, and you can't tell if he's actually stupid or if he's just pretending to be stupid. It's like a First World War Catch-22 basically, and he's the Yossarian character. It's as funny and as daft, and it's just great. So having reminded myself of Hasek's Good Soldier Schweik, on the other podcast with Antonia. I'm going to big it up here as well. It's a fabulous book. Go and buy it.
That sounds brilliant. Well, my one then is A Good Man in Africa by William Boyd. It's not long. It's very funny. Very, very funny. And you can't go wrong with William Boyd. First book he wrote.
Really?
Yeah.
Prize winner? No? Or
yeah, I think so.
It's very good.
Yeah. Right. Okay, everyone.
Fabulous.
I think we've picked quite a few depressing ones, but some nice cheery ones.
Nice,
Your
happy
first one
ones
was
at the end.
cheery. Lambert Simnel.
That's so funny. I haven't read a historical fiction book with quite so much masturbation in it for a long time as well.
Oh, well, there you go.
Come again?
Can't go wrong with that. Okay, listeners, thanks so much. And then you will find links to all the books that you've been recommended, as well as any other relevant links. But until next time, and the episode on Saturday, I can't quite remember what it is, but when I get back home, I will know. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Antonia.
Thank you, Ollie.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks so much for listening. Links are in the show notes. Please share with friends and family. And if you want to get in touch, you can through X or email history@aspectsofhistory.com. But until then, thank you and good night.